Today I want to talk to you about your audio and how you can Today I want to talk to you about your Today I want to talk to you about keyframing and how you can use it in Filmora to make your audio do exactly what you want it to do. Stick around, I'll show you how. Hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell to be part of the conversation. The audio keyframing is a really cool feature in Filmora that I don't know if everyone is aware of, so I wanted to cover it a bit today. Now, if you have either a video track with an audio attached or a separate audio track in your project, when you click on these, it'll open up your audio controls. In this case, I'm clicking on the audio file down in the audio track, but if you click on the video file up in your timeline, you'll have these different tab options: video, audio, color, and motion. And if you click on the audio, that will let you control the audio track that's attached to your video file. Now on the left, you'll see this volume meter, and at the bottom, if you see, there are these little arrows and a dot in the center. Now some of you may not have noticed these so far, but these are really important features. These are keyframing features. So wherever your playhead is on your timeline, if you click add a keyframe, it'll add this little dot keyframe right into the audio track that's highlighted. Here I have the video track highlighted. If I had highlighted the audio track itself below it and clicked that button, that little dot would add a keyframe right there as well. Now, why this is important is these are just position points that you've added that allow you to add information to the track at that point. Let me scroll out so you can see what I'm talking about. If I highlight this track, these little arrows here will allow me to scroll through my keyframe spots. And if you see, when I click to the left, it brought me right to that specific keyframe. If I move to the right and added another keyframe to this highlighted video section, I could now toggle back and forth between them. They'll turn gray. If you look, can you see them turning gray and the playhead moving back and forth between them? That tells you which ones we're working with. Now, whenever you add a keyframe and you've got it activated, see how this one is a little bit more gray? That's how you know it's activated and the playhead's on it. You now have the ability to control the volume feature for that track just at that specific point. And you can turn it down. See, I'm pulling the fader down, or you can bring it up and make it louder. Pretty cool, right? Now you can also do this in the frame itself. You can grab it. See how my mouse cursor turns into a little hand? I can actually grab and pull. But a lot of times I like to do it with the fader itself. It just makes life a little bit easier. Now, if you notice, if I put my playhead over a certain area and then just grab the volume, it'll insert a keyframe automatically and allow me to pull it up or down. Now, the reason you need multiple keyframes, let's say I had none. I'm gonna go back to the beginning of this section. Let's say I move a few seconds in and I highlight this section and I decide to click and add a keyframe right here. See where it added it? Now the volume is set at its existing level, and once I add a keyframe, that says that I'm going to change the volume level at this point, but it's going to affect everything from the previous point to there. In this case, the previous point is the start of the video. So if I pulled this down, it would bring everything down. There's no previous spot for it to reference. So if I want to do something different, like have it fade down, I need to put in individual keyframes so that Filmora knows, stay at a volume and then change it to spot. So in this case, let's say I wanted to stay at a certain volume for a certain period of time. Here, I would add a keyframe. But if I just turn that down, it doesn't do what I want because it can affect more of the track than I'm expecting. If it's this point in the video that I want to start turning the volume down, I would go to another spot where I want the volume to be lower, add another keyframe, and then bring the volume down there. See what that does? That keeps this volume steady to that point and then fades from the first keyframe to the second. So there's two different values for each keyframe, and Filmora is making up the difference between the two. Now you can also grab these keyframes and slide them around if I want it to be closer, like a closer drop or fade. But another thing I want you to see is, let's say I just wanted the volume to dip quickly in this section. I would move a little bit past to where I wanted to go back up, add another keyframe up here in the left, and then I could toggle between the keyframes using these arrows. Let me go back one to that middle one. See how that playhead jumped? Now I can grab the volume fader and pull down this middle keyframe. And because I have 3 keyframes, the first one here is telling it to stay up, the second one is telling the volume to dip, and the third one that I didn't touch says the volume should be back up here at that point. So it automatically knows to fade down and to dip back up. So having those other keyframes as reference points allows you to sway that volume up and down along your timeline. And you can add as many as you want and wherever you want them to be. In my case, when I was doing my audio, I had this other frame here where I raised my hands up and the volume went up. And then when I pulled my hands down, I dropped the volume down. Do you see how the volume keyframes are set to have this roll off? So when my hands went up and down, I rolled the volume off and pretended like I didn't know what was happening and my hands were controlling the volume. You can see all the different audio keyframes I've added to this audio underneath me. One other little trick that I did in here that isn't necessarily as obvious is I started moving my hands left to right and moving the audio from the left channel to the right channel so that it's swaying back and forth in stereo. And the way I accomplished that, let me show you this little trick, is I separated these audio tracks and I added more than one down below. And you can add audio tracks up here on the left, add audio track, and it'll insert more audio tracks below. What I did was I actually cut the audio into sections and grabbed them and dropped it down into the track below, which is really simple to do. If you grab any audio track, left click on it and hold, you can pull it into other places and slide it around. And that's all I did was I sliced the upper audio track here from this main audio track and then grabbed it down into a lower track. Now where these overlapped, what I did was I had this fade to the right. This track here is centered. And as I moved my hands to the right, I faded out and then I started fading back in to another track down below. This track here, if I double left click on it, you'll see the values of it. And to make that be an audio track that was just in the right ear, I just left click up on the panning control and pulled it all the way to the right and hit OK. Now I had an audio track here that was centered, and I crossfaded between the two so that my centered audio track started switching over to this audio track that was faded all the way to the right. Now, if you don't know how to do a crossfade, these two sections are actually split right here. All I did was I extended this main track out a little bit, and where that crossed over right here, if you click on your main track, you'll see this little white arrow at the end. That'll allow you to fade. So I faded out right at that point, just from where my new right side audio started. And my new right side audio, I started fading in by left clicking, dragging, and bringing that back. So these two now crossfade into each other. And it sounds like the audio is being switched over to the right. If I wanted this to be a longer crossfade, I could have stretched that out and dragged this fade all the way back so it lined up right with where the other one started below it, and then done the same with the other track. While one fades out, one is equally being faded in. That creates a crossfade. If you want to learn more Filmora audio tricks, I'll put a link over in the end screens and down in the description.